Alright, so my name is Yared Lee. I go by the alias BoomDraw. I'm a music producer slash DJ slash artist slash, you know what I mean? I wear many hats, you know? I figured out I liked music pretty early. Both of my parents are involved in some way in like some music adjacent, industry. My father is in like sound system, music, radio, broadcasting kind of vibes, and my mother works in the media. So I was always around that kind of environment. And then in the complex that I grew up in, I had a group of older friends who were all boys, and at the time when everybody was getting their own personal computer, so then people started to get production programs and share the installation files and stuff like that. So I got to try Fruity Loops, when it was still called Fruity Loops, like way back in the day. But I never actually really took on to it. You know what I mean? But it's just interesting because that one of the boys that was in my complex at the time stayed with the music, and then he's now De Niro, who works for UIM, and he has produced a lot of like big dancehall songs, you know what I mean? So it was just interesting to always be around that. And then my personal interest in music got serious around, I would say, like sixth form, when I started building a sound system, because my dad is Gabriel Selassie, who owner and operator of Kingston Dub Club. So having that influence, I kind of got into it because I was always interested in like technology, music, kind of cultural kind of things, so yes, I started out with the sound system thing on more of a technical side. Like I was really interested in construction and the carpentry and electronic aspect of it. So then after I left Jamaica to go to college, I decided to start DJing, which was like late 2013, late 2013. So then DJing progressed into music production. So then music production started in the summer of 2014. So I'm going on 6 years right now producing music. I at a point when I was living in Miami, I was working at this restaurant / nightclub called Koyo Taco, where I was already DJing there for 6 months at Dubwise Miami, and then because I was still working like a day job at the time, I was like, this feels like a better day job in addition, because I would get to be in Winwood and like be in like this artsy musical like cultural area that was thriving at the time. So it was cool to be known on both sides in like the work environment and also as a DJ,
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, a few years after, I changed jobs a couple times, and then I was actually working for a logistics company in like a pretty, I would say, what, a quote unquote like secure desk job kind of thing, you know what I mean? And I started to feel that comfort that people talk about, that 9 to 5, and then like you kind of get used to it, and because there's a whole thing set up in there, it's like with benefits and all of them things. So but yeah, so I got offered a job by this record label, which is VP Records, which is a very prominent record label in not only just the reggae music space, but even in terms of as an independent record label, because they're a very large independent record label in terms of the size of most independent labels,
Mm-hmm.
So I was offered a position with them, and I was able to leave my position at the logistics company and take like turn over a new leaf pretty much and like get this opportunity to work in now the administrative side of music, you know what I mean, which is like separate from, you know, the actual making of the music, you know what I mean. So working in the administration now is more in, you know, in line with like, you know, my goals as a musician, or like to be in the music industry, you know. Generally, like, both of my parents were very supportive actually of my decision, because both of them understand what it's like to have a goal, or like to follow a path that is non-traditional, you know, considering that my mother works in the media, my father has also just been, you know, doing his own thing as an entrepreneur, sound system operator, DJ, radio DJ, you know, he's just been always in that field. So they understood also, not only that, they also understood that there are actual careers within the music industry that can sustain a living, you know what I mean? So, you know how most people, you follow what you're aware of, you know what I mean? So many people don't know about the music industry. They only think about like artists, you know what I mean, or like adjacent people, but they don't know that there's a whole industry of people that support the music, you know what I mean. So they understood that, so you know what I mean, but it was still not the easiest thing to go through, because I had actually dropped out of school to fully pursue my career in music, you know what I mean. So it was still a decision that they supported, but it wasn't just like, oh, whatever, you know what I mean. It was still just like, hey, are you sure about this, you know what I mean. There was like a lot of healthy skepticism, you know what I mean. I feel like the closest people that I surround myself with not only are artistic people themselves, but just people that understand that in the age that we're living in right now, there are a lot of non-traditional ways to sustain a living, you know what I mean. Not necessarily make a lot of money or what have you, but something that you can put a certain amount of work into and be able to sustain yourself just as you would in a quote-unquote traditional career. So my peers were generally supportive, you know what I mean. And the people that I sought opinions from, because obviously, like, you know, I'm not just asking anybody, you know what I mean. So, but my direct peers were very supportive. Not that they were saying that school is bad, or that anybody. I'm not saying that school is bad either. You know, it's just that the path that I'm on as a musician and as an artist is equal to that of academia, and it's just different. So I decided that this path was for me, and the people that I was directly like physically around at the time was a group of musicians that were my peers, you know what I mean. So when I went on to my university portal and like deregistered, which is actually, you know, the anniversary of that is actually coming up, you know, on August 4th, you know,
slow it down
3 years. I went back to the studio,
like that.
Dre Day studio, big up Dre Day, and all of like my brethren that I had made it through music was there, you know, Jamaican producers, Benjamin, Chris, Tessellated, SOS was there too, SOS Dynamics, you know what I mean. And it was really validating, because these were people who I looked up to as peers who had achieved a certain level of development in their careers already, you know. So it was easier for me to follow the path, considering that I had friends who I could talk to that were figuring out their own ways but still finding success. My style of music is it's eclectic, you know. It's heavily influenced by the 90s era of like East Coast hip hop. You know, most people would call it boom bap, the boom bap sound, quote unquote. It's very inspired by my love for reggae music, you know, so I listen to a lot of what people would call like deep, like roots reggae music, like a lot of cuts from the 70s, from the 80s, you know, stuff that only came out on vinyl, stuff that's very rare, due to the influence of my father, you know. And I find that, and also just, you know, whatever music I happen to be listening to, you know what I mean? So like I like to experiment because music is more of like a skill. So it's just like when you think of different music, different types of music, it's just like, hey, I wonder if I can make that. Or, you know, you make your own interpretation of this thing, you know. It's just like if you were a carpenter and you were like, hey, you know, I want to try and make a desk, and then I want to try and make a cabinet, you know. So it's just like, okay, I'm gonna try and make my own version or my own design of this genre of music. So, but mostly I would say I stay towards like between like a healthy fusion of like hip hop and reggae, you know. Sometimes staying on either end of the spectrum. Sometimes I'll make like straight reggae things or straight hip hop things, you know. But like I'm always experimenting, you know. So, but but to be specific, hip hop and reggae are like the two main ingredients of my, you know, my influences. The main goal for my art and my music, I would say, it's really I'm trying to have an accurate translation between what the listener ends up hearing and what I was hearing when I thought of it, you know. Because, you know, like when a lot of the music starts like as a thought sometimes, you know what I mean. So then if I'm able to get the recorded music as close as possible to what the idea was, then that is one of the driving forces, you know. I also want my music to be an example to other Jamaicans who may be younger than me, to know that that the landscape is diversifying, you know what I mean. So I feel like it's like I'm, you know, leaving a pathway behind me in a way, because people will be able to, if I'm successful at what I'm trying to do, you know, people will be able to access me as a resource of information, or to use me as an example of steps that you can take to make it in a certain way. You know, everybody has to find their own way, but many pathways intersect. So the more signs, or the more, you know, the more information I can leave behind through my own success and helping others achieve success, is another thing that motivates me. Because I would like if I could hear everything that I liked coming from a Jamaican, if you know what I mean. Because like I like a lot of different kinds of music, so I like when I can hear a lot of different kinds of music coming out of Jamaicans. if you are genuinely interested in having a conversation with me, then you can follow me on Twitter at BoomDraw Physics. But everything is at BoomDraw Physics pretty much. And also, if you're interested in investing directly into me and my brand and my music, you can make purchases at boomdraw.bandcamp.com.